Research shows that promoting gender hierarchies can be a driver of gender-based violence. I'm Robin Whittaker, a biblical scholar, and today I want to talk about whether the New Testament promotes the submission of women. Some people argue it does, and one of the passages they go to comes from a letter called Ephesians, chapter 5, where it says, "Wives, submit to your husbands as to the Lord." Now that seems fairly straightforward at first glance, but we need to look at the context. For starters, the literary context. This entire section of Ephesians 5 is governed by a phrase that says, "Submit to one another out of reverence to the Lord." Submit to one another is about mutual humility and service in relationships. But secondly, it really helps if we understand the ancient context of the 1st century CE when we read these sorts of teachings. Because what we have here are a set of household codes, which we find in Greek and Roman texts, that talk about how men are to manage their household. This reflects the patriarchal structures where men are head of the home and they have authority over the women, the children, and the enslaved people in their house. Now, we find some of those values reflected in the New Testament, but we also find them subverted. So here, the author tells men to love their wives. This is not a word we find in other ancient texts outside the New Testament. And to love their wives as Christ loved the church. How did Jesus love? Well, he came to serve, to heal, to help, and ultimately to give himself up and die. This is the manner of loving that men are supposed to have for their wives. In its ancient culture, this is so radical, it cannot be overstated. It completely subverts the authoritarian power of patriarchy. So no, I don't think the New Testament teaches that women should submit. I think when we read the Bible in its ancient context, we can see that it's doing something quite different.